Hello everyone, I'm Roger LaFrance, Kodanja Paldan, Cheezic Tang Sudo Federation, and we are here today to honor Grandmaster Robert Cheezic. We are here today to celebrate the 75th anniversary of Moo Duk Kwan as established by Wan Gi in 1945. We are also here to celebrate Grandmaster Cheezic's 61 years in Tang Soo Do. And we're also here to celebrate the recognition of Grandmaster Cheezic as one of the pioneers of Moo Duk Kwan. So, sir,
yes, sir.
Before we start, would you like to say a few words?
No, I'd like to say, when I was informed about this honor, I was really taken back. It's quite a thing. When I look at the recipients, a lot of memories flash back and pleasant memories. And when you're doing something and enjoying it, you really don't count the years or count the time, and then all of a sudden it creeps up on you, and you look back and say, wow, we did all that. And that's what I'm saying, wow.
Very good. Now, may I ask you a little bit about your early years before Tang Soo Do? Growing up, where you're from, your time in Waterbury during the 1950s?
Yeah, I was born in Pennsylvania, a little town called Pittston. And at 5 years old, my family moved to Waterbury, Connecticut. And there I remained. I went to school there. I went to grammar school. I went to high school. I graduated from Leavenworth High School. I was active in sports. My whole life, really. I played high school ball, football, and baseball, and I also participated in CYO, Catholic Youth Organization, sports. So I was kept pretty busy, and I lived there until I was 17 years old, and then I come from a family of GIs, of uncles, and my father. They all were in the service. And I just felt I'd like to go into service like them. And I did. And enter the United States Air Force in 1957. And the rest is history. I went into the Air Force, trained at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, and then was assigned to Stewart Air Force Base in Newburgh, New York, which is probably 75 miles from my hometown of Waterbury at the time. So I was pretty excited about that. I spent over 2 years at Stewart Field. My job was draftsman illustrator. That's what I did, and I worked for EDAF, Eastern Air Defense Force Command. And while there, as I normally did, I took part in sports. I was a pitcher on the baseball team. We had a very successful season. We not only were in the Eastern Air Defense Force League, so to speak, but we also were in the Newburgh Semi-Pro League, which was made up of a lot of ex-Major League players who lived around the New York City area, and Newburgh had a great semi-pro league. We played in that. That same year, we won the Eastern Air Defense Force Championship, which was from Maine down to Florida. And we also won the Newburgh Semi-Pro League. And it was quite an honor. We received accolades and traveled quite a bit. And then, as I said, after 2 years, I felt I'd like to go someplace. I was in the Air Force for over 2 years, and I wanted to be transferred to Europe. I went down and I volunteered to go to Europe. I said, I'd like to transfer out, and they asked me where I'd like to go, and I said, I'd like to go to France. I'd like to be stationed in Paris. I even had the name of the base. It was a very small, and I felt I could.
So you put in a request for Paris.
Paris. That's correct.
And what was the result of that request now?
Well, after requesting it, and I figured, hey, they asked me, that must mean I'm going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2 weeks later, I went to the orderly room, pick up my mail, and there was a letter to me with orders. Airman Second Class, Robert Cheezic, you've been assigned to Osan Air Base, Osan, Korea. And the rest, another history started then.
Now, what was your first impression of Osan when you landed there?
Well, let me tell you, whenever you were assigned to Osan, the first month you pulled guard duty. And you lived in your barracks, but you didn't go to your workstation. You guarded missiles. That happened to be my job. And I went down, they outfitted me with warm clothes. It was in November. And a shotgun. Then I had I believe it was the 6 at night until 6 in the morning shift, guarding missiles, the Matador missile, outside. I was on the inside on the missile pad with the missile. Then there was a double fence, and it was barbed wire. And on the inside of the barbed wire, there was a guard going around, or a few guards going completely around the missile pad. Then, and he had a dog. On the outside, there were other guards, and they were continually moving. So I was ready to do that for 30 days because I was told to do it. On the third night, I was informed to report to headquarters the following morning. And I don't know, I didn't know why, but as I said, I took the order and I went down to headquarters. It seems there was a section that was in need of my MOS. They're in need of an illustrator to help this one sergeant get his section out of trouble. They were falling behind and a lot of complaints, and they felt I could help.
So this was also an opportunity to get off the 6 at night.
Well,
6 in the
yeah.
morning, which seems as though that helped clear up your schedule.
I wasn't enjoying 6 at night till 6 in the morning guarding a Matador missile. I think I looked up and down that thing about 1,000 times a night. But this opened a door. I reported to that section, and of course the sergeant said to me, how long do you think it'll take you to clean all this up? I looked at it, and I came from a pretty good section at Stewart Field. I had a real good instructor there, and I'd like to say I was pretty good at what I did. I looked at it and I figured 2, maybe 3 weeks. And then I said to myself, now if I get out of here in 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to have to come back and guard missiles for another week or 2. So I said, probably 5 or 6 weeks. Well, that was fine. So I started in the next day,
So
cleaning
now,
up.
After the 5 or 6 week time, what is it that initially gave you either the opportunity, the time, or the desire to take Tang Soo Do?
Well,
What is it that either gave you the curiosity or the opportunity, certainly the time, to look into taking Tang Soo Do at Osan?
well, during our first week there, I got to know the sergeant pretty well, and the first week, one of the days, he said he was leaving early, which was like around 4 in the afternoon, because he took martial arts, he took judo. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And he said, if you're interested in it, stop down and see what we're doing. So he told me where they were going to be. And I closed up the shop that day, and I went down and I found the judo room.
Now, was that in Osan?
That was
town?
right in that same building. This was a
On base?
humongous building that was called, I don't know, they call it the Green Monster or something.
But this was on base? Was it?
On base, oh yes.
Okay.
This was headquarters. And they had all sorts of offices there and things of that nature. So anyway, I went down and watched the judo, watched him perform, and I watched the instructor. As a matter of fact, the instructor was one of the foremost judo instructors in the world. His name was Mr. An. Later on, I got to really appreciate him because I heard some great stories about him. But and so that evening, when I was leaving, I'm going down the hall, and there was another gym. And in that, there was Tang Soo Do. And there was Master Shin, and he was working out his class. I remember in the class was Robert Thompson. He was a red belt. And no one else that I remember at the time. But I stopped in there, and Mr. Shin, at a break, came over to me. He asked if he could help. And I said, I'm interested. Well, we talked a little bit. He went back to teaching, and he said to come back a couple nights later, which I did, and I started. That's how I started Tang Soo Do. And I liked it. I finished up my tour with the graphic department where I helped them out, and reported to my how would you say it, section, where I was in a civil engineering group, and I was a draftsman. But I continued to go down to the headquarters 2 and 3 nights a week, and eventually sometimes out into the village to work out. I moved along.
Now, how was it when you went into the village compared with the Tang Soo Do that Master Shin was teaching on the base? Did the individuals in the town accept you and welcome you?
I didn't go out to the village until I was a red belt, okay? When I felt I knew something. And I went out there and I realized I didn't know as much as I thought I did. It was an awakening. The belts that were there, the students, they were all Koreans. They were all most of them were black belts. There were red belts there, but not a lot, mostly black belts. And the instructor spoke no English at all, but I knew enough Korean by then when he gave the commands. I did great in the forms, in the kicking, and one-steps and things of that nature. It was the sparring that I got my lesson. These people sparred as if they meant it. And you remember, there were no gloves, there were no pads. I didn't wear a mouthpiece. I don't think anyone else did, I don't recall. And it was, as I said, it was an awakening. I didn't go out there that much, but I did drop in now and then. There was enough to do weekends. Master Shin used to take us to demonstrations, and we would solicit for the school, GIs, and we even had a couple of Koreans who worked on the base who took karate in our dojo.
So where would he take you for your demonstrations? He would take some of his students from the base, any of his students from town, or just from the base?
We always had a couple of Koreans who would come along, but mostly Americans, you know, the class. And we went up to Seoul at various, there are clubs that he was familiar with. Friends worked out there, did different things. And they weren't always karate schools. There were social clubs and things of that nature. In fact, once we did a demonstration out in the village, outside our base. And the name of our village outside of Osan was Chico Village. I never realized what it meant, but then I found out once. And it was a dirt road that went through the village, and the name Chico in Korean meant mud, mud village. I didn't know this, I found out. But you didn't go out with, especially in the rainy season, you wore what they call paddy boots, because your feet were covered with mud. But we went out to the theater there and did a demonstration, which was a mistake. Shin, he didn't know any better. He just took us out there. We did all sorts of things. I remember the first time I went, I was a white belt. And we did a lot of breaking, bricks, roofing tiles. You didn't find a lot of wood in Korea. There just wasn't any wood. And most of the village was made of cardboard. They had a frame and they covered it with cardboard, and they heated it on the ground with like charcoal, and Papa-san would attend it. And I guess it was the first solar heating that ever happened. But we were demonstrating, and Mr. Shin had me breaking bricks. And I broke a brick, and I had never done it before, but he just said, do it, and you did it. So he puts the second brick up. Well, I still carry the knuckle out of place from that second brick. But that was a mistake, because then whenever I walked through the village, whoever was in that theater that day, they remembered me, and I had a reputation then. I took Tung Chu Do. Even though I was a white belt at the time, they had me as an expert. And I had a lot of the little wise guys hanging around the village, calling me out and calling your names. It wasn't a happy experience being out in the village.
Now, how about Master Shin? What were your feelings toward him? Or how did you look up to him? Was he a extremely well-respected instructor with the servicemen and with the people within the town?
Let me tell you, Master Shin, he walked on water. Okay? He was just the ultimate. And he could do everything, and he did it well, and he was a great teacher. He was a great teacher. I learned everything from him. He was my mentor, and to this day, I can relate when I'm teaching or watching something in Tung Do. I relate back to the way he taught it and what his attitude was towards things. And a lot of things, excuse me, a lot of things at the time didn't make sense to me. I didn't know why we were doing things. And all the way up until present day, some of the things come to me and I realize what he was telling us.
Well, I have a comment to make that in terms of your instruction, you have brought up a lot of individuals to accomplish things that even they did not realize that they could attain. The sum of this, pushing people to their limits, yet allowing them to succeed. Does a lot of that come from the way you were treated by Master Shin?
Yes. Example. We were doing a demonstration at our service club on base. And we always would try to get new students in. Master Shin brought out a cast iron circle, a ring, with handles on the side. And the object was to go up, go through the cast iron circle, and break bricks on the other side. Had I ever done that? No. And I never saw it done. He picked me to do it. I kicked the bag in the gym, and I could get off the ground pretty good. In my day, I got up into the net on a basketball hoop, so I considered myself, I was a flyer. Shin realized that early. So here I was demonstrating a flying sidekick through this hoop made of cast iron. Now mind you, if you hit the hoop with your head or something, it was cast iron. And I was very aware of that. Well, I did it successfully, that demonstration, and he was pleased. The next time we did a demonstration, and it was off base. I don't know, I think it was up just south of Seoul in a village, and it was outside. And he had the hoop, but around the hoop he had like cotton. I don't know why that was on there. So it was time for me to go through the hoop and do my flying side. He had the cotton soaked with lighter fluid. And just as I was about to take off and go through the hoop, he lit the cotton. So here was a burning circle of fire, and he had boards on the other side. I did it. And then the big thing was putting the fire out. I remember they're bouncing it around on the ground with the dirt, trying to throw everything. They're asking for water, but this was globs of cotton soaked in lighter fluid. And my uniform got a little warm going through that thing. But that's the way Shin was. He wanted something, he told you, and you did it, you delivered. I remember when he first taught me a back kick. I just took to that thing. I loved the back kick. To this day, that's my kick. And I did, over the years, I did very well with that kick. Because I wasn't a big guy. I was like 5'7", and I had to be a little sneaky. And that was my kick.
So Grandmaster Cheezic, you received your black belt while you were in Korea. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. In my 12th month there, Mr. Shin informed me that I had to grade. He said for black belt. And I wanted to, of course, and I said, well, you just tell me what it takes and I'll be there. We went up to Seoul for one grading, and I was late. He took me there late. The grading had already taken place. Wang Gi, that day, talked to Shin about grading me. So they wanted me to stay overnight and come back the next morning, but I couldn't because we borrowed a truck off the base. We had to get the truck back to the motor pool, and I couldn't just not go to work the next day. So they made arrangements for them to come down to Osan, and they got the gym, the big gym, and they packed people in, and these guys that came down, 2 of them were in military uniforms, okay, and others put their black belt uniforms on, and anyway, they put me through my paces, and didn't say nothing to me. Just, it was I didn't know it was a grading, I didn't know what it was, because all of a sudden they showed up. And because of the language barrier, they didn't tell me I was grading or I was going to meet with these people. As I said, I just showed up for class, and we went up to the gym and we did this. Then, a couple of weeks later, I was informed, and I was going to leave within a month to go up to Seoul to test. So we got all ready, and a bunch of that picture that is history as far as I'm concerned. Me sitting with Wang Gi and other black belts, and my instructor, Master Shin, who's in the second row. We got together, and I was ready to go again. But Wang Gi came in, and we sat down, and through the interpreter, and it wasn't Shin, because Shin didn't speak that good English at the time. In fact, later on I'll tell you some stories at his 40th anniversary on some novel things that happened. But Wang Gi presented me with my black belt papers, and it was a shock. I couldn't get an answer out of anyone. I said, "Is this what I think it is?" And they said, "Yeah." And that's the paper I have today. But as I said, we went up to Seoul, and I wasn't going to question them. I was ready to go before thousands, and I wasn't. I didn't take part. And they had said that the timing was off. If I was to grade with everyone else in Seoul, I would have to be there in December. And I was going home. I was slated to go home in November. And the rest is history. I got my papers, and that was it.
So Wang Gi evaluated you and awarded you your black belt papers in 1960.
In 1960, that's right.
Very good.
And I questioned it with Shin later through an interpreter, and Shin said, no, he never ever did that with anyone. So count your blessings. That was, he thought a lot of you, We went out afterwards because it was customary to take the Grand Master Wang Gi, out for something, for dinner, and asked where he wanted to go, and he wanted to go to the BX on base up in Seoul in Ascom City. It was an army base, and he wanted to go for hamburgers, french fries, and Coke. And that was the dinner that I paid for and took him to. I was ready to buy him a dinner, starting with kimchi and akamando and stuff like that, which I was familiar with. But no, he wanted a hamburger, and we were all there. I had all of the judges and whatnot, and we had a grand old time in the BX.
How
They
was
thought
it
that-
being with Wang Gi?
Pardon?
How was it being with Wang Gi? What was he like?
It made an impression on me, but I just held that guy as, he walked on water, I had never met him before. I'd never seen him before. I heard about him all the time, but then all of a sudden, here I was sitting with him and next to him and all, when we had lunch in that photograph, and then asking various questions. He'd ask a question, then he'd ask me, and I'd give an answer. Sparring, I wasn't bad. I was pretty good. I was pretty good at that, and I was very good in forms. I made sure I was ready, and it was scary.
So to be evaluated and presented your papers directly by the founder must have been quite something in terms of shaping your attitude for Tang Soo Do for the future.
Well, I'll be honest with you, at the time, I didn't think that it was a big deal getting my papers from the director, from Wang Gi. But I later on found out, like Shin told me point blank, I don't ever remember him doing this before. Now, I don't know if he did it afterwards, but, I know I got my papers then. Then afterward, the following March, I think Chuck Norris got his papers. Okay, now I don't know if he went up with Wang Gi or how he got it, okay? In the annals of Tang Soo Do history, the book said that Chuck and I tested together with the same grading date, and that's not true. I tested alone. And then I went back to the States. I came back, and I came back for discharge. I came back and got discharged, and I went home. Chuck, he left, I guess, in March.
Had you worked out with Chuck Norris at all while you were at Osan?
Yeah, but I didn't know who he was. I mean, yeah.
Because you were already black belt, or say
Yeah, I was a high red
and he
and
was
stuff
just
like that.
beginning.
And he had to be in those classes.
Okay.
It's funny, when I got back to the States, he came back for reassignment. I think he went to the Air Force Academy. He was an air policeman. And then when he got discharged, he settled in Redondo Beach, California. And we started talking then, every month. And he started building a name for himself in California. And then all of a sudden, he was rated in the top 10 in the country, and he came to New York City, to Madison Square Garden. I met him, and in fact, the first time he came with his wife, and my wife and I met him, and he was going to fight in the evening. During the day, he said to me, my wife wants to go to a certain restaurant. Could you take us there? And I said, sure. Where do you want to go? He says, we want to go to Mama Leone's, which I knew of, I had been there once before. But I said, sure, I'll take you there. So we went there. Now, in those days, I would go to tournaments, and on the East Coast, the tournaments, we wore gray slacks, we wore a blue blazer and a red tie, white shirt. Chuck was California style. He had a flowery shirt, bell bottoms on, and open shirt, And so we go into the restaurant, and the maitre d', I'll never forget, he went like this. I said, "What's the matter?" No, he must have jacket and tie on. Huh. So I said, "Chuck, they won't let you in." So we borrowed a waiter's jacket and a waiter's tie, and we had dinner. That's a true story. You can take that to the bank. But that was when he first came to New York. That was his first dinner.
Cheezic, you're back in the U.S. and you are in Waterbury, and you're now discharged from the Air Force, and you have this skill that you earned and worked for in Korea. Now, what was it that made you decide, or helped you to decide, that you would teach Tang Soo Do rather than just keep this martial arts skill to yourself?
Well, initially, a few friends asked if I would show them some tricks. This is how it was felt. No one knew anything about karate in Waterbury, Connecticut then. I came back with a skill that no one else had. I started in a backyard, helping a little bit, and then there was a barn. We went in the barn when it got a little cold. This was for a few months, then it got very cold, and we went to a grammar school gymnasium that I rented on Saturday mornings. And by then I had accumulated maybe 5, 6 students. And I rented the gymnasium for an hour and a half on Saturday mornings, as I said, and then the classes started growing. And then the classes went, I graded them. And in those days, you went from white to green to red to black, and you had gups in between. But there were no orange, blue, purple like there is today. So I had the first grading for green belt. And I had a pretty darn good class. I had about a dozen students, and we met every week diligently. I mean, religiously. And then other people started coming in, and I tried to blend them in. Again, I didn't know about teaching. I could only relate back to what Shin did, and he would always have someone help him with the white belts. As I recall, I used to help them, teach people how to hold their hands, how to do a hadamaki, how to do the first form. So I didn't really have anyone. I had some green belts, but I had no one I could really trust as teaching. And the people came to take lessons from me. They didn't come to take lessons from a green belt. So I went from 1.5 hours to 3 hours renting the gym, and I had a beginner's class, like from 9 till 10:30, and then I had an advanced class, 10:30 to 12. That went on for about a year. And then I had upwards of over 30 people in the class. I start thinking, all along I was thinking, I have to get a place. So I found a storefront, and I turned it into a karate school. And it was at East End of Waterbury, nice section. I put a sign out front, Tang Soo Do. I never used the word karate. I stuck with Tang Soo Do. I know a lot of Korean Tang Soo Do schools, they put karate out. I didn't do that. I put Tang Soo Do. I had people come into the school, want to know where the tables were. I said, tables? What table? What do you mean? Well, this is a restaurant, isn't it? This is a Korean no, it's a Tang Soo school. Well, what's Tang Soo? I said, well, that's the Korean word for the Japanese word karate. That's the way I explained it. Anyway, I started in a storefront. With that, I had junior students. Well, I had all teenagers. That was my class. I didn't have anyone else. I didn't have adults. I didn't have little kids. So, and whenever we'd go places, other schools, like in New York, they referred to us as here comes the teenage group. And our teenagers fought in the adult divisions. But the school started developing, and I added children, I added adults, and I added women. Teenage women initially, but then older women. I kept the women separate for about 9 months. And then the women came to me, they wanted to work out in the adult men's class. I said, we'll try it. And we did, and it worked out. And that's where we ran them all together to this day. And we've had women competition teams who fought nationally and did very, very well. We fought against the best. And this was just our students against the likes of Linda Denley, Shavella Aaron. We had all fought the oil teams, the oil company's women's team on a national level. But we did that, and then our children's program took right off. I had some black belts, new black belts. They were young. They were in their late teens. They related very, very well, very good to kids. And we developed, excuse me, we developed some children who fought on a national level. I took them to Madison Square Garden. I took them to Boston. I took them to Washington, D.C. And these were 9 and 10-year-old kids. And they did well. So we had a reputation. We're well-rounded, and we made black belts. So.
Now, how did you feel about your teaching, and it was becoming not only so successful, but your students were learning so much about Tang Soo Do? How did that help you develop even further as an instructor and as a black belt?
Well, we started growing as a school, and we were upwards of 60, 70, 80 students. And then students went off to college, and they would come back to me, could I start a program at my college? The college program took off. We presently, we have programs at all the major colleges in Connecticut, St. Louis University, Washington College in DC. We have quite a college program. That was one group. Then we had the service clubs around the area, Greater Waterbury area, the Boys Club, the YMCAs, the Parks and Recs. People in those communities, they wanted to take Tang Soo Do, but they didn't want to travel into Waterbury. Many of them were 20 and 30 miles away. We started programs at these Parks and Recs, YMCAs, Boys Clubs, the Girls Incorporated, to the point, present day, we have over 70 schools. And they're manned by all graduates and black belts of our Tang Soo Do. So we're very proud of that. We're very proud of that. I'd like to talk about, in 1990, we were invited to go to Poland and Russia. And we took 87 black belts on a trip to Łódź, Poland, and Moscow in Russia. We demonstrated in both countries. They were still under communist rule. So it was pretty exciting. We did 4 demonstrations in Łódź, and that was just absolutely awesome. They had the Polish national TV cover the event. The Polish team, which wasn't a karate team, it was well, they did things like, we were in a hockey rink, and they brought a horse in, and somehow they lit the back of the horse on fire, which was scary. And they cantered around the ring, galloped around the ring, and finally they put the fire out. That was an awakening. I really didn't want to be part of something like that, but the Polish government didn't seem to mind it, and we were on TV and we were a part of it. And while they were doing that, they were letting off, believe me, quarter sticks of dynamite at either end of and the horse, of course, reacted. It was quite a thing. That was only half the trip. Then we boarded a plane, excuse me, to Moscow, and we took the Polish team with us. Well, we got to Moscow, and in Moscow, we performed in an arena that was used in the '82 Olympics. Was that the Olympics that the United States didn't take part in? Our president pulled us out of it, Jimmy Carter, because of Afghanistan. But that's another story. So we went into this Drabushka Hall. It was where they did the gymnastics during the '82 Olympics. And we were doing karate there. 87 of us, plus the Polish team. And we marched onto the floor and lined up. And then they played our national anthem. They played the Russian national anthem. And then they introduced me. And the people were screaming. And they introduced me as Chuck Norris. And I'm there and I'm looking around. And my students were cracking up. They understood because they had a massive, big screen. And here I am, and it says, Mr. Chuck Norris. Well, I told them they shouldn't do that, to correct it. And they said they would do it tomorrow. So we had the demonstration. They tell me there were between 12 and 14,000 people that night at the demonstration. It was unbelievable. Things happened, and we did 4 demonstrations, 4 nights in a row. And every night they were just absolutely sold out. Did they ever correct that I was Chuck Norris? No. But they didn't call me Chuck Norris anymore. During this, people were coming up to me and slipping me notes and putting it in my pocket to read later. These were people who were practicing karate from books, and they had a following, and they wanted to affiliate with me. This started in Poland, and it started in Moscow, and we did affiliate. There was a young lady who was a black belt, Mariva, and she ended up being a part of our federation. The following year, we went back to Russia. We met her and visited her dojang, which was in an apartment building. It was like a rec room, and we did a grading. And I graded her, and she was pretty darn good. And that was the beginning of something, of us going out and establishing schools outside of the U.S. 2 years later, we brought her and her students to the United States. We brought them to Waterbury. We took them to tournaments. We took them to New York City and all over the Northeast. And we had friends in Moscow, Russia, which was unusual. That was the start of something. Then later, we established schools, as I said, in Poland, and we went to China. We went to Australia. We established a school in Australia. To this day, we have representatives there. China, we had Chinese students approach us about affiliating with us, but we were advised that it wasn't a good thing. And to this day, we don't do something like that. But in all, we visited 23 countries, and we established schools in a good percentage of countries. Some of them, like Italy, they wouldn't allow us to have a school there, but they wanted us. We performed there, we did tournaments there, and again, we were approached, but we had to be careful what we're doing.
Now,
Poland,
you
I'm
do-
sorry.
I was saying, I'm just going to ask about Poland. You do have. Now, Grandmaster Cheezic, you had just been mentioning that through your teaching, you had the opportunities to travel to other countries, and that you were invited to take a team to Poland and Russia. Now, you were beginning to tell us about a very successful school in Poland. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, Poland is probably our most successful venture into Europe. And that didn't start by going to Poland and meeting people there. That started with a gentleman who has been with us quite a while by the name of Adam Gorski. He came to the United States from Poland and started school at Central Connecticut State University. That's where I met him. He came in there as a white belt and stayed on until he got his black belt. He continued on with the Federation, and he was responsible for us establishing a school in Poland initially, with a black belt by the name of Marcin Kostrika. Excuse me, that may not be the correct pronunciation, but that's the best I can do. Adam met this gentleman, brought him to my attention. We went over to Poland, met with him, and the rest is history. We've brought Marcin here a few times to train and to just because we love him and he's a part of our family now. Now in Poland today, we have 9 schools under Marcin, under Adam, under our federation. From there, recently, in the last few years, one school, one instructor in Belarus contacted Marcin at a tournament and said he'd like to affiliate with us. He's now a part of the Cheezic Tank Judo. Belarus, the city he's in is near the border of Poland and Belarus. That in itself is quite a story. Again, It wasn't that we went over there, it's because Master Gorski is the one who originally was from Poland, lives now in Connecticut, in Southington, Connecticut, and he takes care of that for us in Europe.
Well, I think it's another example of how successful the Cheezic Tang Soo Do has been, not only within the United States, but in other countries. Plus, you've had extensive traveling. I want to ask you next about some of your early tournaments. Maybe do you remember the very first tournament that you participated in, and then perhaps some embellishment in terms of what other tournaments that you brought your students or teams to?
We've been involved in tournaments from day one, and there weren't any tournaments at the time in Connecticut. If you wanted to compete, you had to go to New York or Boston. I remember taking teams into New York, and again, we're known as the Teenage Club. And I would enter these students into adult divisions, and in many cases they won everything. One of the first tournaments that I attended was in New York City. And this is a little history. I went with just a couple of students. We were, at the time, it was going into New York was tough. But the tournament was honoring, who's that? Masoyama. And he was at Madison Square Garden, and it was in honor of him, and he did a demonstration and all this sort of thing. And it was his coming to the United States. I went and entered the tournament and went to compete the first time around. He entered the ring and insisted I take my Tang Soo Do uniform off and wear a white, clean white top. He did not want Tang Soo Do stripes. That was when they started calling us the stripes, the stripers. And Masayama is the one who made me take that uniform off. I did. I went and bought a clear white top and competed. Years later, he came into Hartford, Connecticut, and a school in Hartford affiliated with him, and they had a tournament in Hartford. I went to the tournament. I wore my stripes. He didn't like the idea at the time, but I did wear the stripes, and I kept them on, and they stayed on from then on. But in the day, those are the types of things we faced. Little picayune things, especially in New York City. We had a rough time making a name for ourselves. I think probably the biggest influence on the credibility of our organization, of the Moo Duk Kwan, was Chuck Norris going in and winning at Madison Square Garden. He wore stripes, and from then on, many of the competitors realized who we were, because at that time, any karate in New York City was either Japanese or Chinese. That was it. We went in and we were the first ones, the first Korean teams to go in. Junri in Washington, he was very instrumental. A lot of people don't know, Junri started in Texas, And then someone talked him into going up to DC, and he was very successful up there. In fact, he's the one who brought sparring equipment to the forefront. And really, that's why Tang Soo Do or karate is still practiced, and there are still many competitions because of the equipment. A lot of people were getting hurt. Why? Because as we practiced, we got better, got stronger, caused more harm. The people who understood what it was all about, they were careful and had good rules in tournaments. But many of the tournaments, and I'll tell you, especially in New York City, there were bloodbaths. There was a place called Manhattan Center. I think they had a tournament every Sunday. And if you wanted to learn karate, full contact karate, that's where it started. But again, those were the beginnings of Tang Soo Do / karate in the United States. Well, in the Northeast. So.
Now, you initiated a lot of firsts in not only Tang Soo Do, but karate in general. Just as examples, taking women and allowing women to train, allowing young people to train, allowing individuals that were challenged to train. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, first I'll tell you about our challenge team. This came early in our years. We've been at it 61 years. But after about 10 years, we had people who were in wheelchairs, people who had spina bifida, they had various diseases and things like that that prevented them from competing in a regular class. I had a student by the name of Jeff Laliberti. He came to us and he was in a wheelchair. He had spina bifida. He already had some experience. He had an uncle who taught karate. But he and his brothers, they decided they wanted to come to us. We took them on, and between his oldest brother, and we have a woman teacher who is a master belt now by the name of Janet Grimes. She and the Laliberti brother, the oldest one, Mark, developed a program. And what was unusual is they had to develop one program for Mark's brother, Jeff, to learn Tang Soo Do out of a wheelchair. Then they got a blind student in, and they had to develop a program on how to teach the blind student, who, by the way, is a black belt. And interesting how they trained him through sound, making sounds, learning the forms, giving sounds left, front, right, rear, forward, and they developed the forms this way. The kicks, they did breaking, they did weapons. It was quite a thing. But we took that team. There were 12 of them. There were actually more, but 12. We took them to Russia. We took them to Moscow, and they demonstrated in Moscow. Moscow did not have a handicap ramp in the whole Soviet Union. They did nothing for handicapped people. If anything, they put them away. No one ever saw them. we demonstrated with, initially, there was a modest crowd, but then the word got out and we had all kinds of people coming. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it, seeing these. And we had people approach us. Can you get a program like that started here? We talked to the government and things like that, but we were unsuccessful at the time. Later on in years, they started taking care of their handicapped people. Challenged is what we call them. But the great thing about that was all of these people, like those 12 that came that time, that came to demonstrate in Moscow, they went to the Bolshoi, which is the most formidable ballet company in the world. They were given seats right up front. They were taken to the Moscow Circus, which is a one-ring circus that is absolutely unbelievable. They were given seats right up front. It made all of us instructors so proud that we were a part of something, of a history. And we took these students, and it just started initially where they came into our studio one at a time and wanted to take part because they wanted to be like everyone else. But that trip to Russia was absolutely unbelievable. There are so many different students with different problems that went, and it was a good feeling. It's a good feeling for me, the instructors, but can you imagine how good those students felt taking part in something in Moscow?
Now, I recall that you had once said that you had a student who could only walk with crutches, and that student did a demonstration of self-defense. Tell us about that again.
That student you're mentioning is Scotty Albright. He was a high school student in Waterbury, Holy Cross High School, and he wanted to take Tang Soo Do. We brought him in. He walked with the aid of crutches, the only way he could get around. We trained him a couple, 2-3 years. Then all of a sudden, we started going to demonstrations with him. We went to the International Olympics at Yale when they had it. He performed there. Then we took him to Hungary, to a town called Tatabánya. It was up in the mountains there, and it was a karate tournament. A fellow from Australia, as a matter of fact, he was from Tatabánya. He returned there and had a tournament there, and all the proceeds went to the town. We went there, full house. And they had a division for challenge people. Scotty entered it. What he did was a self-defense, how would you say it? Demonstration with 3 of our students, 3 black belts, where they would attack him and he defended himself. Well, he put on such a show. At the end of it, the people in the audience, standing ovation, cheering, and then the judges gave him first place. The people came out of the stands. He was lifted up and carried around the arena. This young man was beside himself. Here was a kid who was born this way, who stepped up and absolutely, what it did for him. What is Scotty doing now? Scotty is a lawyer in Washington, D.C., working for the government to further the help to challenge people. You couldn't write something like this, but that's what he's doing. Scotty Albright, remember that name. We also have, one thing I'd like to mention, we had a young man come in here. He was a dwarf. He was about 2 feet tall, in his late teens, and wanted to take Tang Soo Do. We trained him. Somehow, National Geographic found out about him, and they came in and they wanted to talk with him. Well, they put a half-hour segment on National Geographic about this. His name is Danny White. He now lives in the Chicago area, and he is doing something related to his problem. But to him, it's not a problem now. It's an asset, and he is really someone we're very proud of. But again, it's more than just karate. And I like to say, how did we get here? Well, I think about going to Korea, meeting J.C. Shin, meeting Wang Gi, and they gave me an identity. Wang Gi gave Shin an identity, Shin gave me an identity. I'm proud to say I gave identities to a lot of people. A lot of black belts, red belts, green belts. People who found themselves, started demonstrating things they learned here, and the rest is history. So, what impact did Wang Gi have on us in Tang Soo Do? A great impact. It started with him, and all I can say is, thank you, Wang Gi. You made my day, you made my life. Because I've never been prouder of people in my whole life, and it's because of you. So, thank you. I just threw that in.
So, sir, very good learning about your experiences in Moo Duk Kwan, Tang Soo Do, and how you felt about your instructors and the entire idea of meeting Wang Gi in person on this, the 75th anniversary of Moo Duk Kwan. Now, Cheezic Tang Soo Do Federation has been extremely successful in terms of bringing the skills of Tang Soo Do to others. About how many black belts, master belts, and dojangs is there as part of Cheezic Tang Soo Do Federation?
Presently, we have over 2,800 black belts in the Federation. We have over 100 master belts. Schools, we have 78 schools under the Cheezic Tang Soo Do Federation. What else do you want
It's
to know?
quite a statement. No, and I was going to bring up all other, in other words, you are receiving an award from World Moo Duk Kwan as a pioneer of Moo Duk Kwan in the United States, which is quite an honor. And I know you have received other honors in the past, but rather than list them, let's just say it's a pleasure that you have been recognized, not only by Moo Duk Kwan, but other associations as well. Now, you're still active in Cheezic. You are Cheezic Tang Soo Do Federation.
Thank you.
What is the secret of your success? It's 61 years later, you're still a very active participant.
You know, at home, over my desk, I have my black belt papers given to me by Wang Gi. There's only one set of papers that's, to me, more important than that, and it's my marriage certificate to my wife Alice, and the other awards that I have received, this Pioneer Award, I received it in the mail. It came by UPS, and I was home and I saw the UPS truck stop. I saw the carrier come down the driveway and hand me the mail. And here it was. I noticed it was from Mr. Kwan. I opened it and was very taken back by it. I have to say. It made me fill up a little bit. And looking at all the other people who are named along with me, it's a great feeling. And I know how they must feel. Looking back over the years, I have received Student of the Year, I have received Instructor of the Year, I've received Alumni of the Year awards from Boys Club of America, the various organizations around the United States, karate organizations. In New Jersey, at what's the name of that gambling place?
Atlantic City?
Atlantic City, yes.
Atlantic City, yeah. See that? Well, you know I'm not a gambler, so I couldn't remember that. But I've been down there on half a dozen occasions to take part in, witness, and I put in students who received awards there. In fact, at one dinner, we had 28 black belts receiving awards at the festivities there at Atlantic City. It's a great honor to get an award, and it's a personal thing. The evening you get it, you receive it, pictures are taken, and then you take the award home. Then a couple months later, you're sitting at home and the award is up there on the pedestal or wherever you choose to put it, and you stop to think, what made these people give this award to me? What did they see in me? And I start thinking, I know a lot of other people who are deserving of this, but why me? And you start feeling good about yourself. And that's how I feel about the Pioneer Award. I think back being at Osan. I think back being with Master Chin, who I might say, Master Chin, the last time I saw him was down in New Jersey when his federation had an award banquet honoring him. Other than the accolades and all that sort of thing, the thing I remember the most about that dinner, I was sitting up on the dais with Master Chin. But when we first arrived at the dinner, and I had, I think we took 10 or 12 students with us. But Mr. Chin, I introduced himself to all of them, and we're standing in a circle. And I said to him, the last time I was with you, your hair was gray like mine. How did you get hair like you have now? His hair was pitch black. And in his own fashion, that I always remember him, in Korea, whenever I saw him, and the way he explained things, he innocently said, I painted. And I just thought that was unbelievable. Well, everyone else, all of my students, our students, they thought that was just so unique. But that guy, remembering him, is just, I experiencing him in my lifetime, and knowing that he experienced Wan Ki. Like I said, I only met Wan Ki once, but I have to think about, if it wasn't for him, maybe I would have gone to Paris and gotten that assignment. But no, the Moo Duk Kwan, I owe an awful lot in my lifetime to the Moo Duk Kwan, and specifically to Wan Ki.
Well, thank you, sir. It has been a pleasure hearing about your experiences, and I want to thank you on behalf of the entire Cheezic Tang Soo Do Federation for sharing the values that you learned through Moo Duk Kwan Tang Soo Do with all of us that are part of Cheezic Tang Soo Do. So thank you, sir.
I thank you, and in closing, I'd like to say, leave more than you take, and it's more than just karate. Live by that, and you'll still be around just like me. I thank you very much.
Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue.